Hey, everybody, welcome to New Music 30, episode number 7. We've got a great interview for you tonight. His name is Ryan Brewer. Stick around, it's going to be a great show. Let's get to the interview.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me kind of do my little spiel, or I say, hey,
Cool.
thanks for being on the show, Ryan Brewer. Glad to have you.
All right.
Let's kind of dump. We'll just jump right in here. Like we were just saying, like we've not really met in person. I've
No.
seen a bunch of your video stuff from. Oh, I'm trying to think, like maybe Mile of Music.
Uh-huh.
You've
Yep. Played Mile Music a few times.
I've seen video stuff from that through. I'm sure it was probably Ben Cannon or somebody like
Yeah.
that taking video. Maybe Cole Woodruff.
Cannon's a good ally of mine. He shares quite a few things pretty consistently. Yeah.
Well, I think that was probably our initial introduction, at least as far as like me booking you for a show, was probably Ben. Was me going putting out a post saying, hey, I got an open slot this weekend at one of the spots. Who's got an idea? And then that turned into, I think that may have been one of the first times we collaborated that way on it.
It could be. I have the memory of an ant, so it's I have no idea how it happened, but I do remember that we did meet via booking some Books and Brews stuff, and
Sure.
It would make sense to me that Cannon would have been the one that greased those wheels.
You got a new album coming out.
Yeah, I got a new album coming out. It's actually it's kind of a sequel to an older album. In spring of 2017, I released a record called Addercism, and Addercism kind of was I guess the prequel to Exorcism, which is this new record coming out. And Addercism is a phrase that's closely tied to exorcism, but it's used much less frequently.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that term at all. Yeah.
Addercism is kind of it's basically kind of, it's a realization that perhaps there's something you can accomplish or something that you can know as a result of the possession. So you decide that you're going to keep it, basically.
Right.
It becomes kind of a symbiote in a Venom kind of way, I suppose, if you're
Right.
a comic book nerd. So that's kind of the idea behind Addercism, because you think if this depression isn't going to go anywhere, it might as well help pay the rent. So it kind of teamed up with it and wrote a sad record called Addercism. And then, that was 2017, and a lot of things have changed for me, and a lot better place now. And so I figured it was time for Exorcism. It was kind of time to let those demons go. So yeah, there's a new record coming out in a couple weeks.
Nice. I was watching, I watched the videos that you sent me, and it looks like, do you do all your own recording at home? Do you have a place that you regularly visit? Is it like a buddy's project studio?
For this record, for Exorcism, I did it all myself. The recording and the tracking and all that, and then I sent it to Ryan Gibbons to do the mastering, because he does a great job every time I give him anything to master. So it's very easy to just keep going back to him for mastering. So he mastered this record like he's mastered the last couple.
Nice.
And I had a friend of mine, John Fischel, help me with the mixing a little bit on the end. I don't fancy myself a mixer. I think I can track, but I don't like mixing very much. I feel like I got it to about 80%. And then I had my buddy John help me get it the last 20%, and then send it away to Gibbons to master. So most of the stuff I do for this record, and lately most of my stuff's been done at my house here in this room.
And you're playing everything on the whole album? It's just you? Print style?
Everything is me, except for there's one bass track from a friend out of New York called Sean Muzzy. He's an incredible bass player, and I got him to play on a song called Platitudes. And then the very last song on the record is actually a co-write with Katie Peterson. Oh, nice. So she did all the piano, and of course her vocal parts, and I did everything else. So
cool.
Yeah.
So you have a particular order you'd like to talk about these videos in?
We can talk about Relative Roses first.
That's the oldest one, right?
Yeah, it was actually the first single for this Exorcism record. But a lot of things happened, a lot of ins and outs and what have yous, that kind of delayed this record. The COVID quarantine being the tail end of that. delay. And so Relative Roses feels like it was released 5 years ago, but it was technically the first single for this record. And so I did a goofy music video in my house for it. And
yeah, it's super fun.
That's what
I think people will be able to tell that it was a minute ago just by the difference in haircut.
Yeah. It's a year ago. Yeah, I did. I actually had a lot more hair like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
I finally got sick of it, and I was afraid that the only reason I was keeping long hair was to like hold on to like my early 30s. I was like, I have long hair. I'm still young. And then I was like, well, here's what you need to do. You need to cut it all off. And then if you decide to grow it back, you'll know that you were doing it for pure reasons.
Late autumn breezes rattling trees, digging deep inside a mind of memories, looking for a lump of coal to ring out like a rag, squeeze diamond dust out on this no paper pad, and every ray of light I seize and shake. A burst of color fall leaves to rake and remember like legal tender, so I can buy my way out of this slum. La-di-da-da-dum. She was a saint then, I was a good Catholic boy. She was baby's first most dangerous toy. It was harder than to shutter the scene, so mama martyred them to keep the kids' hands clean. And every cracked angel whose song I heard propped them up so she could puff and roll them back down to earth. A heart to break, a kiss to take and remember like legal tender, so I can buy my way out of this slum. La-di-da-da-dum. Looking back, simple math, shit-colored 20/20 glasses. It's plain to see now, but the plastic kicked all of our asses. History adds the share of sinners and saints, villains and heroes. It's easy to think we'd all come out smelling like relative roses. She was my first real role on my first big stage. I was her first real boy, her last big mistake. She tried to advertise, but I went hard in the paint. Tried to posterize, nose grew like a list of complaints. And every storm she called, I capsized. She swallowed each shipwreck with bloodshot eyes. Green eyes I remember like legal tender, so I can buy my way out of this slum. La-di-da-da-dum. Late autumn breezes rattling trees, digging deep inside a mine of memories now.
Relative Roses is it's kind of the idea of resisting anybody who tries to sell you a rose-colored image of the past, especially your own. I think there's a lot of ego killing that needs to happen when you're being nostalgic, right? If you're thinking back about the past, you really have to kind of try to be as maybe a little mean to yourself. You have to be like, okay, our instincts as humans are to be like, and this thing happened to me and I had to deal with it, right? And I think you need to say, okay, well, this thing happened and I was there and I probably had a lot to do with it happening.
Right.
It didn't just happen to me. So Relative Roses, it talks about that a lot, but it also deals with, it came about from, I was teaching a songwriting course at Purdue Fort Wayne. And I was constantly telling my students, you need to mine for diamonds. You need to go back through your old notebooks and see what lyrics you've written, little pieces, little lines that maybe you go, hey, that was great. And I don't know why I never did anything with that, right? Because long story short, I don't believe in writer's block. I don't think you're allowed to just like be like, I didn't show up and do the work today because I didn't feel like I had anything to say. There's always something to say. So it was about going back and mining your diamonds and seeing if you could turn them, mining the lump of coal and turning it into a diamond. And that's kind of the idea behind Relative Roses. Cool. Relative Roses is really the prime example of that first swing of the bat. You're like, let's just get out there and take a couple hacks and see what happens.
Sure.
So that's what,
totally
what came of it.
The second one that you sent me is a spoken word, which kind of caught me off guard a little bit.
I've always been terrified of genres. Like I had a band, late high school, early college years called Shameless Self-Promotion. And we very much so tried to make every song a completely different genre. And then I had a band called The Fallow, and we were like, what if we can take all of our favorite genres and just dabble in a little bit of each of them? So it kind of ended up sounding like, what if Leonard Skinner listened to a lot of emo punk rock? And so we did that for a while. And then when I went solo, I was like, I'm not going to do the genre thing, which ended up tying in because my first record had a spoken word track on it. Cause I was like, I'm going to do a spoken word track.
Right.
And I loved it. And I had a few fans that were super into it. And then I never did it again. And so when it came time to start promoting Exorcism, I was like, I want to give people additional source material, if you will, for each of these songs. But I don't want to sit in front of a camera and be like, here's what I was feeling when I wrote this. Here's what it was about. And here's what you're supposed to feel when you listen to it. I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to provide more like research opportunity. If you're into the lyrics and you kind of want to know more context, how can I provide you that context without spoon feeding you what you're supposed to feel while listening to this song? So I came up with the idea of combining like the love for the spoken word thing with the additional source material for each song. So each song on the record is going to have its own accompanying spoken word prose video. So the one for Relative Rose is actually coming out tomorrow. So
it's ladies' night. There was a time when I'd have found that news exciting, without exception. But tonight they swim in schools, ready to learn, ready to teach, ready to tune in or drop out, sink, swim, or just float. Loose lips sink ships, but this is barely a boat. So I cast a line. A nibble, a slight tug. She bites like a mosquito and I pull like the riptide. Muddy water and dark red wine. Pearls to swine, I mutter as I pay my tab and I load out. It's not the woman, it's the idea of a woman that you're after. A bird in hand is worth a bar full of bush and beer and bud. A songbird on a windowsill is worth fuck all these days. She's got plans. You've got dreams. I mean, she's got dreams too, but she keeps them in the backyard. Something else to mow around. Standing water, rusted metal. All that hope will spoil your dinner, I warn myself as I leave in the middle of the night. If there are bats in the belfry, imagine what the basement looks like. The canyon choir echoes back, a shattered mirror of tragedy in focus. Who can sort the details? That's what they pay you for. The sin eater, the meek, the silent margin of error. Walking on broken glass and painting the town red to mark the occasion. The definition of insanity is to keep getting out of bed hoping your soul follows. It's sand through your fingertips, eroding water, diminishing returns. Enough about me, I said. It's ladies' night after all.
I think a lot of times having that kind of open-ended video version of a song is a lot more valuable to on both ends. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't need to see Johnny Depp in the video and know that he's playing the character in the song. Right. I just want to kind of make my own movie, and I feel like that's kind of what you're talking about.
For sure. I think, I love the book is better as a metaphor for that activity, because I think that it's 100% true. I read somewhere that they did this, studies have shown. Right. You know how somebody's about to say some bullshit is when they say studies have shown before
people
that.
Say,
you're like, really? Which people and which studies are you talking about? But I did read this thing where they did this, they did kind of a study or a poll or whatever, and they found out that people who read fiction are more likely to be empathetic than people who only read nonfiction. And that kind of struck me as it relates to songwriting and stuff, because, if I write a nonfiction song and tell you this is what happened and this is how it happened, there's really no imagination there. You're not having to place yourself in my shoes,
right? Because
I'm standing in front of you in my shoes telling you what it feels like. Sure. Whereas if we're writing fiction, and Ben Gibbard, one of my favorite songwriters, to paraphrase, he had an interview where he talked about how, like, I can't be held responsible for the things my characters say and do in my songs. Like, that's not necessarily me, right?
Right.
So I think that like writing that open-ended music, and it leaves that opportunity to inspire empathy, because it forces you to try to figure out what was going on in that song. It first makes you go, okay, I'm listening to this song. What am I feeling right now? And then you go, why am I feeling that? And then you go, did the songwriter want me to feel that? Or am I taking my own? Like, you're having to actively deal in empathy just by listening to a song that's kind of open-ended like that. And I think that's important, especially now more than ever. I think it's important to develop empathy as a trait.
All right, before we get too out of hand here, let's move on to that last one. Binging Sopranos. That sounds like that was a full-on kind of quarantine.
Yeah, super pigeonholed there in terms of content on that one. Well, my girlfriend and I were literally binging Sopranos, and we still are. Yes. It's a very heavy. It weighs a lot. It's a very heavy show. It takes a long time. We'll get to a point where we'll binge a whole half a season, and then we gotta take a break and go watch something else. We gotta watch Fleabag or something. Get out of this heaviness and try to get into some other stuff.
Eric Cartman in my life right now.
I gotta do some South Park. Honestly, that was the first song that I sat down and I was like, I feel like everyone's gonna do a quarantine song. I feel like we're gonna have all these quarantine songs. I was like, I hesitate to wade into that water. But then it was kind of one of those things, like you were talking about. We're all going through this collective fuckery all at the same time, and everything was different for everyone. And so I wanted to capture that idea of no matter how certain you were of your place in the world directly before quarantine, when that lockdown happened, the next day, you were uncertain of your position in the world anymore, because even if you were essential, and even if you were still going to work, and even if you were still doing your job, the people who were partaking of your services were affected. the overall money expenditure in general was down. You know, everyone was affected in some way. And so that binging Sopranos is kind of about that paradigm shift of being a person that I'm not overly, I wouldn't consider myself to be overly sociable. I don't put myself in positions of being with, you know, hundreds of people in the same room at a party and stuff. That's not my thing anyway.
Good.
I'm not an extrovert in that way. There's certain types of energy and attention that I love to have as a songwriter. And then there are other types of energy and attention that I'm like, I don't want that attention. That's
Right,
not the kind
right.
I want.
Yep.
So I'm not that kind of extrovert. But by nature of what I do and what I do for a living, I do have to be around people. I have to be shaking hands, and I have to be selling CDs, and I have to be doing all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden that rug's pulled out from under you, and you're not certain of anything anymore. And so that's kind of where Binging Sopranos came about from. It's that idea, that paradigm shift of knowing exactly who you are, and then the next day you're like a stranger to yourself.
I wouldn't say I'm the most overtly sociable person. I'm not super extroverted, but so much of what I do for a living is social. I have to be in venues, and I have to be, you know, selling merch and shaking hands, and it's weird to be for it to be government mandated that we can't do that right now. So here's a song about trying to find your place when your place kind of doesn't exist anymore.
Now that the bars are all empty and cards swiped or inserted, they're locked in the dark. Purses and wallets, whatever you call it, this thing's got me shook to my core. I keep writing, though nobody's listening but you and the dogs. And no matter how true the lyrics, those two remain aggressively unmoved. Time, after all, can't be passed by applause in a room full of drunks when the drunks are all home wringing hands. So cancel your plans for binging Sopranos and learning piano. I want to play you a song, and you don't have to sing along. And now that the clocks are all torn from the walls and the towers we built seem to shiver, the rivers still run on in silence. Our love is more dust of divine than straight science. Call in all cars, all the kids we had left inside of our chests. They all punched their cards, and now something is missing and nobody's listening but you and God. And no matter how hopeful my lyrics, my soul remains unfortunately unmoved. Time, after all, can't be fueled by applause in a room full of drunks when the drunks are all home washing hands. Cancel your plans for live streaming house shows and live yeast for bread dough and binging Sopranos, learning piano, 'cause I want to play you a song, and you don't have to sing along.
Well, let's just kind of wrap this. I usually wrap it up by going, tell everybody where they can find your stuff online, where, like what's your kind of main outlet, or all of the places they can find you, like your YouTube spot, all that stuff. Rattle that off for me.
Yeah. So RyanandBrewer.com is kind of the central hub for everything. And if you forget RyanandBrewer.com, you're going to forget everything else, because everything's Ryan and Brewer. It's Ryan and Brewer on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and the website. And the last thing that I do want to say is that the record Exorcism, in the interest of I've got two people, I'll try to keep this quick as possible, two types of people who still buy CDs, right? There's the person who buys, and they predominantly buy, both groups predominantly buy CDs from independent artists.
Yes.
And the first group buys CDs because they just want to support you. They like that you're out there living the dream. They want to make sure that you continue to make that art. So they're giving you the $10 for the CD. Ultimately, the CD ends up in a landfill because we're listening on Spotify, right? They don't want the CD. They just want to support you.
Yes.
And then the second group of people, they want to support you as well, but they're not just giving you a donation of $10. They want something tactile in exchange for their support. They want that piece of what you're creating. And, but it's never the CD that they focus on. It's never the actual CD. It's the booklet. It's the artwork. It's the liner notes. It's the lyrics. It's all that kind of stuff, right? So my mind is going like, again, the quarantine kind of gives us the ability to switch things up if we want. So I spent a lot of time thinking about, how do I give people that tactile, fun sensation of getting something new from your favorite artist without having to throw a CD in a landfill at the end of it. And so Exorcism is going to be released as a interactive website, and you'll get download card, and the download card comes with a password, and you go to the website and enter the password, and each song's going to have its own page that's completely different, and there are hidden things there and stuff to click on, and some of it's just fun to look at. But the most important part of it is on every page there's going to be a little short writing prompt. And I think the reason people miss live music so much is because that art is a two-way street. Like, I'm providing the songs, yeah, but you're providing the support and the feedback and the critique and the love and all that stuff that we as musicians need and thrive on. And it's important for us to hear that feedback, and we can't when it comes to recorded music. So on each page of the website, there's a little writing prompt. You just write it in. You can do it anonymously, or you can put your name, and it goes straight to me, and we can have a little conversation about how the song made you feel. And, hopefully that kind of opens up that two-way street and further facilitates empathy, because if there's anything, like I said, that I think is most important right now in 2020, it's just developing empathy, that ability to zoom out and kill your ego and think about someone other than yourself. And so I think I need that feedback, and I think music fans need that interaction. And so that's what we're trying to do. So there's no CD. It's not going to be a disc that you get. You're going to get access to the website. And then from there, if you're one of those people, you can download lyrics and artwork and all that stuff and make your own physical thing if you want. Otherwise, you just have access to the website. But the record's still going to be on Spotify and all that stuff. So you kind of decide your own level of involvement. You want the website? Cool. If you just want the streaming, no big deal. So that's kind of the way we're doing it. And I hope everybody likes that website. We put a lot of hard work into it, myself and Jake and Aaron Anderson. And I'm proud of it, and I hope everybody likes it. I'm going to get an Instagram photo of the screen, if that's okay.
Heck yeah.
Got it.
Sweet.
All right, man.
Yeah, thanks for being
on. A lot of fun. Thanks for having me. Talk to you later.
We'll get you in there. Have a good one.
Awesome. See you.
Well, that's all we got for tonight, folks. Thanks to Ryan Brewer for being on the show, and an extra double thanks to you people for tuning in and watching us every week on New Music 30, that show that brings you all of the whatnot from Indianapolis music scene and beyond. See you next Saturday.
Birds of color, fall leaves to rake and remember, like legal tender, so I can